Blog Talk Radio.
People of the States United, welcome to the show, The Constitution Explained. Forget about Limbo and Beck. It's time to turn them off and tune in right here. Make yourself comfortable for the next 2 hours and be ready to be re-affiliated with the founding of our great union. This is the show you all have been waiting for. This is a show where you'll cast aside your indoctrination into the system of lies and relearn the construct of the Union of States as established and ratified in the year of 1789. I am your host, known only as Harry. I strive to assist the people of the states in recognizing the true heritage of liberty and freedom which the establishers of the Union of Individual States had in plan for their future generations. That heritage was not only misunderstood from the initiation of the contract between states, but it was also reconstructed into the monster which we endure today. The people have the power to cage that monster, however, extremely few recognize and utilize those powers. We will be maintaining strict rules of conduct when we are on the air and ask that all callers do the same. This is an educational show, and we desire that children are able to listen to the discussion here without fear of being offended with foul or hateful language. So please feel free to send a chat message or call into the show. We would love to hear from you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Tonight, I want to touch on a few things mentioned in last week's show. I want to especially mention the Supreme Court of the United States and the powers that they were granted within the Constitution established for the United States in 1789. I will also speak about representative government. You will consistently hear me refer to the United States on this show, and that the United States of America is not a country. It is purely the Congress in assembly. The United States is not the states, and the states are not the United States, other than when they act in union through their representation in the Congress when they are assembled. The official piece of ceded land which the Congress is to assemble on is that area we all know as Washington, D.C. The fact is, however, that the Congress in assembly anywhere in the world is in actuality the United States of America. The United States is nothing more than the House of Representatives, the Senate, the President, and the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of the United States is just exactly what it says. It is the court of the Union. In cases which arise within the extent of their jurisdiction, their judgments are supreme. To the lower courts of the United States, which are the Article 1, Section 8, Clause 9 tribunals, the decisions of the Supreme Court are superior. The Supreme Court is the final appellate court for cases which are out of the jurisdiction of the state courts. Only when a case crosses state lines does the Court of the United States have any power in delegating the solution. The decisions of this court are supreme over the states, not the people of the states. An individual is only under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of the United States if their case crosses state lines. Article 3, Section 2 states, the judicial power, and they're not even just talking about the Supreme Court there, the judicial power of the United States shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution. The laws of the United States, which are very few, there's not many lawmaking powers granted the Congress of the United States, and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, in other words, employees of the United States, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, again, outside the boundaries of the states, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party. Now, the next section is changed with Article 11, but I'll read it. To controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens or subjects. Again, only in cases which are outside the jurisdiction of the individual states. And I mentioned the second part of that was amended with Amendment 11. And this one's worded a little weird, but I'll do my best I can here. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. I'm hoping somebody calls in tonight because I'm always a little muddy on that one. It sounds like they're making the distinction between the Supreme Court having jurisdiction over only things that arise under the Constitution. And they're making it clear that it has nothing to do with a citizen of one state suing a citizen of another state for a financial loss. In other words, it only, to me, that translates into, it's more defining that the Supreme Court is only to handle cases which arise from the Constitution, and they wanted to make it more clear. And like I said, hopefully someone will call in tonight and verify what I'm saying is right or correct me if I'm wrong. Far too often we hear of the case Marbury versus Madison as if it is some sort of banner the supreme robes are lawfully capable of wielding against the free-minded people of the individual states. In the case of Marbury versus Madison, both parties were of the United States. Both parties were in disagreement of a procedure which was under the authority of the United States. This was not a case involved purely within the borders of a state. Any case involved purely within the borders of a state were to never proceed past the borders and be decided upon by the Supreme Court of the United States. The Judiciary Act of 1789, Section 13, states that the Supreme Court shall also have appellate jurisdiction from the circuit courts and courts of the several states in the cases hereinafter specially provided for, and shall have power to issue of writs of prohibition to the district courts when proceedings as courts of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, and writs of mandamus, which is an order from a court to an inferior government official ordering the government official to properly fulfill their official duties or correct an abuse of discretion, in cases warranted by the principles and usages of law to any courts appointed or persons holding office under the authority of the United States. Again, all of that above is only persons, courts appointed, or persons holding office under the authority of the United States. The state courts and the state Supreme Courts were not under the authority of the United States in 1789. The state appointed their own courts and their own persons holding office of those courts. All of that, of course, was altered in completeness by the 14th Amendment. The unratified Amendment 14, implemented by force, placed not only the people of the states under the jurisdiction of the Congress and Assembly, and the state legislatures under the jurisdiction of the Congress and Assembly, it also placed the state courts and the state Supreme Courts under the jurisdiction of the United States Supreme Court. It is the usurpation of the original document which has suffered the people of the states the jurisprudence of a supreme set of robes dictating mandates to the enforcers who will beat down your door and shoot you if you resist while they enforce unlawful law upon you. Make no mistake, the Constitution for the United States has not been utilized properly by the states in order to keep this entity of self-declared body of superiority under the controls which the words in the Constitution were to be used to bind them. The power of recreating law by these criminals to the founding principles have only the power wielded by the badged enforcers. these decisions and jurisprudence handed down at the clapping of the gavel have no basis in being referred to as the law of the land, for they each are created outside the realm of the document. Thomas Jefferson wrote, "At the establishment of our constitutions, the judicial bodies were supposed to be the most helpless and harmless members of the government. Experience, however, soon showed in what way they were to become the most dangerous, that their decisions, seeming to concern individual suitors only, pass silent and unheeded by the public at large. That these decisions, nevertheless, become law by precedent, sapping by little and little foundations of the Constitution, and working its change by construction before anyone has perceived that invisible and helpless worm has been busily employed in consuming its substance." In reference to the government itself using the courts, Thomas Jefferson also said, "The government created by this compact was not made the exclusive or final judge of the extent of the powers delegated to itself, since that would have made its discretion and not the Constitution the measure of its powers." So that's enough tonight on the Supreme Court, unless people call in and carry this discussion further. I want to try to discuss and describe the original plan of the Union, how the founders and the framers set it up. And I want to try to get people to understand what representative government is. We do not have representative government. Representative government is not where we just cast a vote on poll day and send someone to an office to do what they want. Representative government is where we elect somebody that is going to come back to our communities on every issue, not with 3,000-page, one-page laws. That representative government is not where we send somebody there to decide what laws will rule us. You go down there and you just do what you want to do because we've put you in place. Representative government is where representative comes back to the people in the communities and explains everything that is looking to be passed. And then the communities tell that representative on every law. And like I started to say earlier, 2,000-page laws, no. One-page laws that say we want the state, or if it's the United States representative, we want the United States to do this for us. That is what representative government is in a Republican form of government, where the people tell the government what they will do for us. It's the opposite today. Representative government is not where we go and see who gives the biggest smile, who kisses the most babies, who waves the hardest at the street corner holding up a sign. That's the thing that has to change. So the president is purely the executive branch of the United States. He rides roughshod over the Congress. The president has oversight over their bill creation. It was only during war that the president had any real power. The president was not meant to have an agenda when entering office. Campaigning to the public should not even be happening. James Madison said, "The executive has no right to decide the question whether there is or is not a cause for declaring war." So the president isn't even supposed to be going to Congress and saying, let's go to war. The representatives of the people and the representative of the states, which is the Senate, are supposed to be deciding whether we go to war or not the president. The job of president is extremely easy in a constitutional America. The job of president, for the most part, entails only that he sits between our voice, the House of Representatives, and the state's voice, the Senate, before Amendment 17, and denies, to the best of their ability, the two entities from ever crossing the line of the limits placed upon the creation of law. The president is the only person tasked with the responsibility to interpret the Constitution. He alone is the one to keep a watchful mind on the power-greedy members within Congress and vigilantly return to them each and every bill which is placed in front of his face, which steps out of the boundaries of the enumerated powers which are actually enumerated tasks to be performed for the states, granted within the pages of the Constitution. James Madison also said, the operations of the federal government will be most extensive and important in times of war and danger, those of the state governments in times of peace and security. The House of Representatives will be filled with representatives of people of exact districts. Outside influence into local voting for representation is an abomination to the lawful structure. Our representative is supposed to represent us, no one else. They should be headed to Washington with no agendas outside the task listed in Article 1, Section 8. Your town doesn't have a proper postal route. You petition your representative to get it done. The principle of representative government is so lost today, it is to the point of non-existent. Nancy Pelosi traveling outside of California to campaign for Democrats to be elected, or Donald Trump traveling to Iowa to campaign for Republicans, is not representative government. In fact, these actions are an abomination to the principle of representative government. The results of these sort of campaigns never end up with the voice of the people being represented in Congress. It ends up with agendas being the voice. Agendas never equate to liberty and freedom. Representative government is exactly what it says. It is a government where our thoughts, our decisions, our mood is represented when the government assembles for the purpose of carrying out the task which the people have assigned for them to do. Representative government is when the communities, through town hall meetings, vote on all legislation as to how the community as a whole or as a supermajority deems the legislation should be created. Representative government is where the individual elected carries the exact voice of their respective community to the Assembly of Government, and all votes on legislation are as directed by their home community. The Senate was the voice of the state pushing back upon the people's voice until Amendment 17, which was ratified by 14th Amendment unlawful state legislative branches. The senators were appointed by the state legislative branch. The people were not to have a decision who was sent to Washington as senator other than changing their own state legislatures. The people of the states and some supermajority of the communities are to be the say in what takes place in state governments in Republican form of government, just as the states and supermajority are supposed to be in control of the Congress of the United States. Rather than a representative elected by a community to voice the opinion of only their own community, the communities as a whole state are to be represented by the senators. The electors of the president were appointed by the states. They were chosen in whatever way the people of the states, through their elective legislative branches, chose to appoint them. However, no person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States, the Congress, was allowed to be an elector. The vice president is not supposed to be running as mate. Read Article 2, which was amended by Amendment 12. The vice president is also to be elected by the electors. Now, I have in many of the groups and some outside of the groups been baffled, we've all been baffled, at where and when this usurpation of the plan was first initiated. Most history will tell you that Burr was Jefferson's running mate. I am totally confident that is not true. When the presidents running for office started choosing their running mate, I believe that was also around the 1860s, but we have not been able to find an actual date where we can say this is the first one and this is where the plan was changed without an amendment. Article 2, amended by 12, still has the vice president with a separate election. Article 1 says first place in the election is president, second place is vice president. Amendment 12 says that there's 2 separate elections. One election for president, one for vice president. 3 branches of government, all to be placed into office in different procedures. Today, all of these offices are being filled by the popular vote, even though they're still using the electoral college, but they're not. It's not being used as it was designed. They all now answer to the voters. That is the basis to the corruption we see. That is why the swamp needs to be concreted over and made into a huge parking lot. So that is our topics for tonight. Please call us and discuss them on the air. We'd love to talk to you. The number to call in is 516-595-8117. And I'll repeat that, 516-595-8117. Well, I'm in the chat room, and as far as I can see, I'm the only one in there.
It might be Thanksgiving Eve.
It might be, or that might be the reason.
Yeah, everybody's getting ready to, big day tomorrow.
Yeah.
So.
That's which is fine. People are listening to the archive. What do you think about we put the preamble off a week? If nobody calls in tonight, we don't have any customers tonight, and I take and delete this show, but save what I just read, and we do that one next week. That gives me 2 weeks to prepare for the preamble.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's your show.
You know it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're a half hour into the show and have no sign of life here at all.
No. It's Thanksgiving Eve, and people are just probably stuck in their cars on the highway trying to get to their relatives' place or something, or they're on airplanes.
Don't say that, because I might be hitting the highway myself tomorrow.
Well, be careful. All right. Well,
all right.
You can call it and tell everybody have a good night. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you back here next Wednesday, hopefully with more content and more callers.
Yeah. And I'm going to leave that on, and I'm going to leave my ending in where I'm telling people we're calling it short tonight because it doesn't look like we have any traffic. We'll be on again next week, same time, same station, 8 to 10 on Wednesday, Eastern Standard Time. And we're hoping to see you then. And we're going to call this episode short, but it'll still be archived. So if you've listened to it, that's how you found it. Thanks again, Paul. Talk to you sometime soon.